Hi there. Welcome to the From Lab to Launch podcast by Qualio, where we share inspiring stories from the people on the front lines of life sciences. Tune in and leave inspired to bring your life-saving products to the world.
Welcome to another episode from Lab to Launch by Qualio, where we delve into the latest innovations and insights from the life sciences industry. I'm Meg, your host, and today we welcome Julien Bradley, the CEO of Axion BioSystems, onto the show. Understanding how cells interact is a critical cornerstone of modern life science, and Axion is right at the confluence of live cell analysis and next-generation technology. Axion's Maestro and Multiwell products are helping to unlock the secrets of cellular behavior and allow the tracking of health and function of thousands of cells at once in real time. That's pretty impressive stuff. Let's welcome Julien in to learn more. Welcome, Julien.
Hello, thank you, Meg.
Yeah, welcome. Thanks for joining us. You've been guiding life science companies in various senior leadership roles for over 15 years now. What has drew you into Axion BioSystems in 2023?
Yeah, so actually, I had known about Axion for quite some time, had been watching them, and had been really quite impressed with what they were doing. And so when the opportunity presented to join as CEO, of course, I dug in a little bit deeper. But the three things that I generally, look for in any company before I make that big investment of my time are, and it's a little cringy to use acronyms, but the three Ps. And the first one is the people. So you really want to work with people who love what they do, are passionate, committed, intelligent, diverse. And so I found all that at Axion actually really exceptionally so. The second one is good products. And again, I was really impressed with Axion's products, with the quality of them, the simplicity of their design, their kind of commercial functionality, kind of thinking through, a smart way to make multiple different systems from a relatively similar framework, and very much tailored to customers' needs. And so after people and products, the third one is purpose. And you really want to work in a company where you're making a difference and where employees feel like they're doing something that makes a difference in the world. In our case, helping to make drugs better, faster, helping to understand disease better. And so those three things I found at Axion, frankly, more so than any other company I've ever been at.
That's terrific. And while it is maybe a little cringy, I think still good for me. Yeah, those three Ps are really important to enjoying the work that you do. Can you explain a little bit more about Axion's products and their purpose and why they are significant in the market?
Yeah, absolutely. So the thing that kind of unifies all our products, as you mentioned in your introduction, is that we help with live cell analysis. So we help study cells, and that's really important because cells, are the kind of the smallest unit of life, if you will. And so a lot of today's diseases and drug treatments and so forth are targeted really effectively at cells. And so understanding how they respond to various treatments, or how they're changing when they're diseased versus normal, helps to develop those therapies. And then effectively, what you see in the cell should also be seen in the broader systems, the organ systems in the body. And there's been a really big innovation over the last couple of decades with what are called iPSCs. And there are cells that effectively you can grow, kind of like man-made stem cells, and you can effectively grow them in a petri dish into all kinds of different cell types, into cardiac cells or neurons or liver cells. And so you can grow them and study these kind of diseases in those live cells, but you need good tools to do that. And so we have some tools that look at the physical properties of cells, like with an imaging kind of approach, and you're looking at how they grow and differentiate. And then we have other ones that look at things like specific properties, like how they respond to electrical currents or how they produce electrical currents. And so those are all helpful in understanding how different cell types might behave both in diseased patients and in healthy patients.
And understanding that cellular behavior, both like from a visual, physiological perspective and that chemical perspective, what are the knock-on ramifications of being able to understand how cells behave?
Well, I mean, one of the biggest things is that if you think about developing, let's say, a new drug treatment that targets a particular pathway, or maybe even like a genetic modification, right? You want to see how that influences, before you go into humans, you need to be able to test the safety of that product. And historically, those experiments were done in animals, maybe first in small animals like rats or mice, and then ultimately in primates or dogs. And that takes a lot of time. It's quite expensive. And so now we're able to do is we can do a lot of that testing in cells in these smaller units. And you may still need to do some animal testing, right? But you can screen a lot more different compounds, a lot more different versions of your drug at a much faster pace and more cost effectively, and then only put into animal testing and ultimately to human clinical trials a much, much smaller sample that's already been pre-selected. So it really does help to accelerate, to both save money for drug companies, but also accelerate that pathway and also save animals.
Love it. That's 3 types of savings.
Yeah.
Time, money, and animals. Can't argue
Yeah.
with that. Lovely. Well, what are some of the challenges you've encountered as your role as CEO, and how have you addressed them there at Axion BioSystems?
Well, look, every company's got its challenges, so we're not immune to them like anybody else. I think, one of the things I mentioned and what drew me to Axion was the people. And I think people are both an asset, but also are challenging, right? And so, we are a multinational company with offices in different countries. We also have acquired a couple different companies over the years. And so we have people from different backgrounds, different company cultures, and even, country cultures. And then different ways of approaching product development or commercial, sales approaches. And so harmonizing all those things, helping people to feel a unified sense of vision and purpose is really important. Helping them to see where we're headed and why we do what we do, and also accept that sometimes we're going to do things differently than maybe they did before or that they would do. And so finding that balance of respecting different perspectives, but also kind of working towards a unified approach. So I think, people are critical. I always tell, when I'm asked kind of what I do as a CEO, and I say, actually, the biggest thing I do is just taking care of people, right? Because if you get your team working properly, then everything else usually kind of falls into place. Secondly, obviously, we've got a number of products and the market's always changing. So we've got some products that are incredibly successful, others that we thought would be and maybe aren't as much as we thought. Markets that change, macroeconomic factors that affect our customers' ability to buy our systems, and so really staying nimble with our strategy, making sure that we're really following customers' needs, and are able to adjust our strategies as necessary. And then lastly, look, it's a tough space to actually make money, believe it or not. Sometimes people think, my goodness, these technologies are so expensive, these companies must just be raking it in. But actually, there's such a huge investment in developing good products and supporting them appropriately, and investing in the future, that it's actually not easy. And so we do, of course, depend on things like government funding our customers and having them be able to take chances on developing new drugs or studying new therapies and buying this expensive equipment. And so find the way to make the right level of investment to work towards profitability is always a challenge, and so one we obviously have to think about.
Yeah, and lots of challenges in this current climate.
Yes.
With changes to industries and regulatory industries as well. So
yeah, that's absolutely something that companies in our space are feeling very acutely right now, and hoping, of course, that the future will allow our customers to continue to invest. But right now in the United States, that's definitely in question.
kind of with that in mind, what mistake do you see other life science business leaders making most often or currently in this space that we're in?
Look, there are a lot of good leaders out there, and they all of them have different leadership styles and approaches, and some come from deeply scientific backgrounds and really understand like the products and engineering super well. Others, are able to connect with customers and just have a lot of charisma and ability to get their teams motivated. So I think everyone's got their own strengths and weaknesses. And I've worked for leaders who were amazing in one regard and had a complete blind spot in another one. And so, I think one of the things that is required in leaders is humility. And if you're not able to recognize that you might have some weaknesses that you don't even know you have, then you're quite likely to fall prone to those. And one dynamic I've seen often is, especially leaders who've been successful in the past, I've grown a company and sold it and made lots of money. Sometimes those leaders tend to overestimate their own contribution to that and forget that maybe there's a little bit of luck and a little bit of timing and some great people working for them, and all those things came together in just the right way, and that they can't just do the exact same thing over again if they join a brand new company. And so sometimes those leaders, I think, have a little bit of take a hard hit because they try doing the same thing over again. They realize that all the same ingredients aren't necessarily there. The second one is what I talked about with people. Like you can't underestimate the importance of your people getting along, of being motivated, and really investing a lot of time in getting to know your teams and supporting them and helping them to grow as leaders themselves.
Yeah, that culture of collaboration and quality is so important.
Absolutely.
Well, Julien, how do you envision the future of live cell assay technology evolving in the next decade? And what should I be excited about in the future?
Well, I think, as I mentioned, the advancements in the cells themselves and the ability to grow different types of cells, and actually to grow also what we call organoids, which are little, basically like mini organs, right? So there are a bunch of cells that grow together into, for example, a clump that could be like a little mini brain or a mini heart. Those kind of developments are actually continuing to advance really rapidly. And so they allow us to test, to learn about diseases even better, to test drugs even more effectively. And it requires us to continue to innovate with the technologies we use to measure them. So, for example, whereas for us 2-3 years ago, we were doing a lot of two-dimensional cell culture analysis with our instruments, we're now seeing more and more of our customers who are looking at these three-dimensional structures, organoids or spheroids, or clumps of cells. And so you need different technology to record those as you do, something that's a kind of a flat two-dimensional structure. And so we've made some really great advancements. Other companies have as well, with some newer technologies. And so that continual advancement of how we build better cell models that represent, life, and how we measure them is, I think, what's going to continue to evolve. And the drugs themselves, there's going to be fads and drug treatments that people get really excited about for a while and then prove to not scale or be too expensive or unsafe or whatever. Like, those things will come and go, but the basic building blocks of life, the cells, that's always going to be what we're aiming to address. And so I think we're really in the right place to be building tools that look and measure those.
Very exciting. Does AI play a role in that future for you?
Yes, it does. In fact, I mean, one of the things that new technologies and advancements generate is a lot of data. And so it's actually kind of a problem in our space, because as our technology gets better, we generate more and more data. I mean, gigabytes of data in a simple experiment. And now you've got to do something with that data. You've got to store it. That's one problem. And you've got to figure out how to make sense of it, right? And so we've actually got some initiatives right now to start using AI to look at data that would be very, very difficult for individual researchers to manipulate. Even if they know how, it would be very time consuming. But to use AI to begin to identify those patterns and to make sense of it over time, and to actually true AI that's actually learning from its own iterations. So we haven't launched those yet, but we're certainly in that process. And I think for sure that's going to become something that in the next 3 to 5 years will become probably much more common.
Yeah. Well, that will be something to watch for in the future.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, going back to that culture of quality, at Qualio, we provide a digital QMS system. So quality is near and dear to our hearts, mine especially. So I have to ask, as a business leader, how do you ensure that quality and compliance are properly woven into everything that you do as your company's day to day?
It's a great question. And, I worked in companies that were highly regulated, that were, had FDA regulated products, for example, where quality systems are essential and and required. And in life science tools, they're very important, but there aren't necessarily the same kind of external agencies that are mandating it. And so it's more a matter of finding the right level of quality that is appropriate to making sure your customers get consistent results and can trust the data they're generating. So we spend a lot of time not so much on a kind of investing in formal quality management systems per se, though we do have those in place as well. But really in careful metrics, monitoring of metrics, studying, for example, customer inquiries or complaints. Complaints is maybe a strong word, but questions from the field, and tracking, if there's anything that's spiking, and being able to address those and figure out if there's a potential need for a software update or something like that. We of course are measuring quality of our products as they're manufactured. We make instruments, but we also make consumables that go with them, and those are in much larger quantity. So we have very sophisticated ways of measuring those products as they go off the line. So yes, quality is really important, because if you don't pay attention to it, your customers will let you know, and ultimately that will hurt the company.
Yeah, great. Always love to hear quality at the forefront of an organization.
Yeah.
Julien, what role do collaborations and partnerships play in your work? And can you share any exciting projects you have currently underway?
Yes. So, I kind of put collaborations and partnerships in two different buckets. There are kind of the commercial ones, and we have several of those. And then there's also the ones with customers, which, there are many more of those. They're kind of usually smaller in scale. But so on the commercial side, for example, we have a partnership with a company called Stem Cell Technologies. They're actually a supplier of some of these cells. And so it's a very nice complementary offering where they're able to sell our instruments to their customers who are already buying their cells and their cell culture media and some of their other products that they use to grow their cells, along with our instruments that are used to measure them. And so that's a pretty exciting one, because they're a large company with a much deeper reach all around the world to researchers that perhaps don't even know about our technologies yet. We also have a partnership with a company in France called Netri that makes kind of a microfluidic cartridge using our plates, and is able to study certain types of applications that we can't do on our own systems. And so we can offer those to our customers and mention them. And likewise, they're happy to refer our technology to their customers. But more broadly speaking, when you think about collaborations, of course, we sell instruments to academic researchers around the world. That's a big part of our business. But a lot of times, those researchers don't have the funds right when they need them to start an exciting project. And so a lot of times, they'll come to us and ask if we can support them in some way. And sometimes that's quite small, where we might just provide them with a loaner instrument for a little bit to run an experiment, or we'll provide them with some plates to run in our own instruments ourselves. But usually the objective of that really is to study some new application, something that might potentially lead more customers or researchers to want to buy our systems. And so we do those all the time. And one of the biggest outputs, of course, is publications and presentations. And those are the lifeblood of our industry. And so some of those have been really important in helping to get our name out there. And it's the best publicity we can have is when other researchers talk about our technology at conferences or in publications. And so those partnerships are really important to us.
And also for the researchers, getting to have these instruments and tools to be able to complete their research, I'm sure is a great benefit of theirs too, as well. So
yeah, absolutely. I mean, sometimes they really just don't have the ability to do it right then and there. And we believe in the long term that hopefully that will be something they can find a way to fund. But in the meantime, at least they can show that the technology answers important questions.
Yeah, that's terrific. Yeah, especially with funding and research being cut in some universities, that's a great benefit for them to be able to leverage. Well, Julien, what are your long-term goals for Axion, and where do you see the company in 3 to 5 years?
So we are, we're owned by a private equity firm, which means that, if I'm honest, it means that at some point we've got to make a return for our investors, right? So at the end of the day, that's important. The good news is, though, that there's no specific time horizon. We have the luxury to build the business that makes the most sense, and to bring together technologies that continue to allow our customers to have the most effective research. And so with the support of our private equity owners, this company called Suma Equity out of Sweden, We intend to continue to grow both organically and inorganically. So we're supporting our own developments of some next generation products, but also acquiring other companies or technologies that fit nicely into this, portfolio of live cell analysis measurement tools. And so I think over the next several years, you'll see us continue to grow both through our own innovations, but also through bringing more different products into our portfolio and our ability to make those available to our customers, in a way that helps them to have a kind of a one-stop shop for a lot of their cell analysis measurement needs.
Well, it'll be really exciting to see what you guys achieve in the next 3 to 5 years on that plan.
I agree.
And with AI too, I think really we're just at the tip of the iceberg there. So exciting.
Yeah, for sure. Yep.
Our last question, Julien, is more of a fun one. If we like to ask each of our guests, if we ran into you at the bookstore, at your local library, in what section would we find you?
I think probably, the kind of books I tend to gravitate towards have nothing to do with life science or business. I like nonfiction stories of like human achievement or adventure. People who like stories of people who have surmounted incredible odds to cross a mountain range or survive a shipwreck, or those kind of stories. One of my favorites is a book called The Long Walk, about some men who were taken prisoners during World War II and spent time in a Siberian war camp in Russia, and then escaped and walked from Siberia to India and through the Gobi Desert and over the Himalayan mountains. Those stories are just incredible, what people can achieve. So I find those fascinating. I always feel good knowing I'm reading something that actually happened.
I'm going to have to put that one on my reading list. That sounds motivational.
Yes, it's a great book.
To get my steps in.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for joining us, Julien. Where can those go who want to follow along with your journey and find out more about you and live cell analysis? Go to learn and connect more.
And you can go to our website, axionbio.com.
Perfect. Thanks so much for joining us, Julien.
Yes, take care.
Thanks.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of From Lab to Launch, brought to you by Qualio. If you like what you've heard, please subscribe and give the show a positive review. It really helps us out. For more information about Qualio, our guest today, or to be a guest on a future episode, please refer to the show notes. Until next time.